Cool. All right. I will do the stop share thing. Come back to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name's Holly. I am the owner of the family room. I'm a midwife. I've been a midwife for just coming up a decade now. Mostly working in WA, although a bit of a stint in Queensland. And one of the things that I saw a lot of was just birth trauma that was affecting like the next pregnancy, and birth trauma that was affecting just how people felt about their upcoming birth or how they felt about themselves. And it was impacting all aspects of their family and themselves, which was really awful. So I created the family room. And then today with me, I've got Hayley, who is one of the doulas over in Queensland. She is in Mackay. She owns Best Birth Mackay. And so she's here today to give us some insight on working as a doula, but also how that interacts with health professionals and how we can make the best of having a doula. And, you know, even just the basics of what a doula is, how they work, what to expect from them as health professionals. So, Hayley, take it away.
Thank you, Holly. All right, I'm going to see if I can just go back to my little clever sharing. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. Okay, so if I press that button there, and then I click that one, I think we're where we need to be. Okay, are we good? Can everyone hear and all that kind of thing? Okay, cool. Yeah, so as Holly mentioned, my name's Hayley. My business is Best Birth Mackay. I'm a doula and I do a fair bit of childbirth education as well with my clients and sometimes with people that don't actually take me into their birthing space as well. Yeah, so a couple of weeks ago, we talked a lot about how doulas work with women. So today I'm going to talk more about how I work in the space with other providers, and me as a representative of doulas. Obviously, we're all a little bit different, but you know, if I can give some insights, then that can be very useful for other people. So a little bit about me and who I am. Birth doula, childbirth educator. I'm a mother of 3. I was a surrogate of a little boy. I'm also a wife. My education background is primary school teaching, and I was also a pole dance instructor. So, you know, put that together, teaching and pole dancing, and you become a doula. And I'm a bit of a frustrated traveler at the moment, but I do love to travel, and writing has always been a little bubbling passion along there. I identify as a woman. I am a fierce feminist and a staunch birth rights advocate. So that's a bit about me. What about a doula? What is a doula? This is a great little definition. A doula is a trained companion who provides physical, emotional, and educational support before, during, and after birth. And some people kind of go, right, well, like that really tells me not very much at all. Other people are like, oh, that's great. So sometimes it's useful to talk about what like what kinds of work doulas do and also what they don't do. So you've got some doulas that specialize in postpartum, some that are conception doulas or fertility doulas. Some take on that full spectrum. So they're going through from, preconception or conception through till, postpartum. And there's a few other kinds of doulas around as well. And there's also death doulas. So people that are at the other end of that life cycle that's supporting, people through that journey out of life. But essentially doulas hold the space. So, and we could spend an hour or 3 or, 20 just talking about what that actually is and how that feels. So yeah, as I said, sometimes thinking about what a doula is not is helpful. So we are not a midwife or a trainee midwife or a frustrated midwife, and we are not any kind of medical professional or advisor. For example, we're not a nurse, we're not a lactation consultant, we're not a trauma psychologist, we're not any kind of other, sort of slash, unless we, someone has actually got those formal qualifications, obviously. That we also are not or should not be a person who is trying to heal their own experience through others. So, that's obviously a red flag if you're working with someone or coming across a doula who's carrying some trauma that they're not really processing in a healthy, productive way. Not to say that we don't, most of us carry trauma, and not to say that that's not okay. It's obviously just we can't be, healing ourselves through others and using them for that. Also, a doula is not necessarily a natural birth advocate. Often, and just like midwives, we often work to protect and support physiology. That's usually what clients are wanting to, to gain from their support experience. However, some women want a fully medicalized birth. They're scheduling a cesarean and they need a doula for that journey as well. And that's perfectly fine. So we don't sort of abandon them at the, at the hospital door or anything like that. We go with the woman. And a doula is not also an advocate for a type of birth as the only right way for someone to birth. So just like midwives, stay with women, we support through whatever way whatever mode or venue the baby's born at or through. Qualifications. So what's the go with the whole, who gets to call themselves a doula and who doesn't, and what do you do to get that, that name? Some, yes, are qualified. So I did 2 trainings, and I am deeply, deeply committed to ongoing, lifelong learning. I love combing through midwifery research on a Saturday night. It's a bit of a hobby of mine, listening to podcasts, all that kind of thing. So very much ongoing, sort of engaging in the birth, learning sphere. Not everyone necessarily does take on a training, and a doula can call herself a doula when she decides to call herself a doula. So for a while I was, I saw myself as a trainee doula, or an emerging or a beginning doula. And then, sort of at some point in my journey, there were some defining moments, and I was like, right now I feel like I am a doula, and I would introduce myself as a doula. And, I wouldn't feel uncomfortable if someone said, oh, Hayley's a doula. So that's a very personal thing. But I guess it's important to remember that we do not have a regulatory body. So we have the Doula Network Australia, which it does serve some kind of function, but no one has to be registered as an essential. No one needs to be, there's no checks and measures or anything like that. So we all work as, I guess, direct employees or direct, subcontractors with women, or, women as part of a couple. So we often are working in a self-employed entrepreneurial type of, work role, that we're not really there's no sort of government funding or anything. There are a few very, very sort of fledgling little programs starting to pop up with some kinds of funding, but it's still, in its infancy. And often we're working, I guess not as much in Australia with the agencies, but particularly overseas, there are lots of doula agencies, but we do tend to work in either in a backup pair or sort of in a community where we have backup, and we sort of, I guess that's a sort of an organic part of the way we work is connecting in with other birth workers in and around us, and you know, that very much that informal but really powerful, you know, wise group of women. And, you know, that includes midwives, of course, and not necessarily that midwives are backing up and that kind of thing, but drawing in on all of that collective energy and knowledge. Yeah, so I guess thinking about how I define my role and my work and my values. So I definitely focus heavily on being as evidence-based as possible, whilst remaining as unbiased as, you know, as I can, or at least owning any bias and being very clear about that. I'm, you know, like most doulas, I'm scrupulously loyal and very devoted to my clients. I personally am, you know, sort of a very passionate educator. So very, you know, very committed to helping people step into their power by giving them as much information that they, you know, that they want or need to tap into their own power. So it's not, I don't do the empowering. I just, you know, do the education part to help them switch on their power. And for some people, that's a lot of education, and some people that's not very much. I am very trusting of birth physiology, completely non-medical. That's, you know, and that's definitely pretty clear across the, you know, the spectrum of doulas, is that we are, you know, we do need to be very precisely, you know, and clear on that non-medical role. In terms of my advocacy, I am in an individual support situation, and I think this is for most doulas. We are amplifiers. We do not speak for a client. We might help their voice be heard, perhaps say their words, you know, louder or in slightly, you know, different ways so that their voices can be heard. So I won't, you know, actually take their voice away or speak for them. So that's very, you know, that's something that I think it's really important that we do that inner work and be really clear on those boundaries when we're working with women. Extremely woman-centered when I'm working with a woman without a partner. When I am working with a couple, obviously very couple-centered, client-centered, and family-centered. Often, you know, we are, you know, as doulas, we're supporting a unit, you know, like, you know, parents and a child or several children welcoming another baby. So we're very much looking at that big picture of what's there, that holistic, you know, woman's life and experience, and how to support her through that transformation, that transition. So I guess just to extend on that, I see the woman as the expert. She is at the center, and she's, you know, she's the expert on all aspects of her own health, her body, her mental and emotional, social and spiritual health. In terms of empowering, as I said, I am not the power. I just help women step into their power and help couples connect as they step into their power. Very woman-centered, obviously, very much like midwives, and women, you know, are encouraged to draw on that professional support, whether it be medical or otherwise, if she needs it, but that she needs to remain at the center of that care. And so that's sort of, I guess, that's that space holding and protecting is ensuring that the woman is able to do that. And, you know, sort of just, I guess, extending on from that notion of following a woman wherever she goes, like a birth bestie. There's no need to deviate from wherever she goes. It's quite, you know, simple but, you know, significant. Yeah, and I guess the special part of the role that I've stepped into is having this like unique little opportunity, which can be frightening. It can be, you know, a little bit daunting at times, can be a little bit isolating, but we get to, as doulas, we get to dwell on the fringes. We get to have that opportunity to work without, you know, regulation and governance, and where we don't have to answer to anyone apart from each individual woman or couple, if that's the case, or family. So we, you know, that's a really humbling and exciting place to be. And yeah, it's certainly, obviously we need to take responsibilities along with those freedoms, and that's certainly something that I've been very conscious of right from the beginning. And I think that's part of the way that we work as doulas, is that we keep cycling through and reflecting on those responsibilities that come with those freedoms. So how does a doula work? So often, midwives kind of, say what do you do? How do you structure it all? Because especially if people are working in a system and not in that, like a private independent midwife, they've got a job and hours and all that kind of thing. And so we have to be quite, we have to be quite, disciplined in terms of structuring a package and having to set up all the business stuff. So that's just, I guess, a little bit of information about how I work through. You can sort of read through that yourself. And obviously every doula does things slightly differently because we're all individual, and that's part of that privilege and that freedom there, which is really nice, that we can all work in ways that honor our own energy, so that then we can give the best to the people we're working with. So and as I said, like in my offering, I guess I'm sort of educationally on call throughout, and I give them some, we do a very deep dive into childbirth preparation, and we do lots of practical hands-on things, which in a comfort measures course that I developed, and then I've since enhanced with the help of another doula, Carly from Let's Talk Birth. So and then we have a birth mapping appointment, and I do sort of chunk a lot of those services up as well, so that if women or couples want to just sort of pick one service or two, or bundle two services without the full birth support together, they can do that kind of thing. So, or they might just want to do the full, like my deep dive comprehensive birth class, which and then they sort of feel like that's enough for them. And that's, there's no one right way. I just kind of started with, right, this is the whole, the whole sort of wraparound service that I would want to give someone, and then worked backwards and sort of sectioned out a few different parts. And I go on call. Yeah, the on-call periods Usually, I've changed that from 37 to 39 weeks, but I kind of, I've not missed a birth because I've not been available. It is what it is, really. And I make sure that we're really clear. It's usually I get a call and I guarantee to be with them within 2 hours. So it's often less though, because we've usually got that relationship and that idea that things are happening. And the times that if I have actually missed it, we've got, we're talking precipitous. If I've missed a birth, then it's been. No one was going to get there, kind of thing. So, I've gotten there as soon as I can. And funnily enough, those ones just go quite well anyway, because they're so prepared. So this is a really, I guess, big point that some women ask, and also some midwives ask, doesn't a doula take away from that client-midwife relationship? My answer is no. And I do draw a bit on Rachel Reed's work here. So she says the expectations that a midwife can protect birth physiology, monitor wellbeing and progress, liaise with other staff. Obviously, this is in a systemic hospital or facility-based environment, to advocate for the woman, complete documentation, manage complications, and meet all a woman's emotional and physical needs is unrealistic. And I, even in a home setting, which obviously some of those responsibilities are, are either not present or, quite different. It's still, like there is still very much, a lot of demands on a midwife. So I think that's the thing, and that's not to say that every woman must have a doula or anything like that, because, we're big girls, we can make our mind up, but there's certainly not, there's no need to sort of talk about turf wars and things like that. And this kind of builds on a little bit from that. So disgruntled midwife said, doulas are just taking all the good bits, that she was talking about, how they're just, in midwifery land, everyone just keeps, moving in on their turf, and, and that like the bit that they go in for of the being with woman is, when a doula comes in and takes that away as well, it's just another, chip off the shoulder, another knock to the cap. So, but obviously fighting's not going to help. That whole turf grabbing's not really healthy for anybody. It's a symptom of the patriarchy. We need to unite and rise above it and not stoop down to it. Obviously, we're all woman-centered, and you would hope that, and when we're talking about not just doulas and midwives, but I mean anyone interacting, whether it's obstetric staff or nurses or physios or, sonographers, anyone working with women through their pregnancy and birth journeys, we all should be woman-centered. So, and we've all got that unique skill set to offer that woman who is, we're like the satellites and she's at the center of the experience. And anyway, wouldn't you rather an overlap than a gap? And also I go into, I think herstory is an important, facet to particularly like the, feminist herstory. And, it's a really important element to weave through, again, drawing a lot on Rachel Reed, and that, we know that continuity of midwifery care is the gold standard, and thinking about how birth attendants have supported midwifery along the way. So that, but that we don't need to, we need to just, continue to collaborate beautifully, and then everyone wins. A little bit more, I guess, on the herstory of midwifery, because I guess like in exploring all of this, it's really, sort of urged me to, really sort of think about where that connectiveness and the boundaries and the differences between the professions, and particularly in what midwifery is. So so those are some of my reflections there, that that I certainly I would never ever I don't ever want to take the role of a midwife or take the place of, or like it's definitely something, a profession that I have a huge appreciation and admiration for. And as I said, I like the midwifery researchers we have in Australia are phenomenal, and it's such an honor to interact with and learn from them. So I think just acknowledging where that comes from, and how that we need to just strengthen midwifery, and that that integrating doulas into that whole dynamic is only going to add value to that cause, I guess. And I argue maybe we could say that doulas are holding space while midwives are with women, and obviously sometimes we sort of cross over with some of that, and as I said before, an overlap's always going to be better than a gap. Oops, going the wrong way. So I guess just sort of talking a bit more about where I've come from and where I'm going. So I have a few different offerings. Education, as I said, is my jam. I've got an early pregnancy crash course that it's been fleshed out, that I've sort of been sort of half constructing with Maternity Choices Australia. Unfortunately, we didn't get the grant where we were hoping to be able to implement that for free for women, but that's something that, watch this space. But yeah, definitely incorporating some of the decisions that need to be made in early pregnancy, talking about rights in birth, responsibilities, and some of those really, really important things, thinking about testing in pregnancy. Another one that's, that I sort of have been really sort of hanging out to get stuck into is a woman to mother immersion course, but that's just, just a nice slow gestation. Maybe it's an elephant baby. It takes a long time. But yeah, definitely like exploring the emotional, psychological, cultural, social, spiritual, excuse me, as well as physical, transformation of that holistic journey. But the ones that I've got currently in place is my childbirth comprehensive course class, which is really, I'm just lifting again, just been working on elevating that further. I did Rachel Reed's childbirth physiology course, and I've read her books, and I listened to her podcasts and her, read her blog and all that kind of stuff. So she really comprehensively draws on lots of great research. I'm also heavily, sort of informed, I guess, by Sarah Buckley, Michelle O'Daunt, Britta Bushnell. But yeah, I just try and, draw in as much recent and relevant research as possible into everything that I do. And then, as I said before, I have a comfort measures class, which is like a 90 minutes of like jam-packed practical things, and birth planning. Or now I've actually sort of adjusted the language there for birth mapping, drawing on Catherine Bell's model of birth mapping. Yeah, and I also, I've got my little, advocacy puzzle piece there. I also do a fair bit of advocacy in our local community where I can, supporting women kind of as like the Maternity Choice Australia rep in our area, but, kind of unofficially. And, but just helping women if they need to issue written feedback, i.e. complaints, or, just stepping into that sort of collective voice, which, that advocacy is quite different. And, I've had to really sort of be careful about how I do collective advocacy versus individual support. So, yeah. And I guess this is a nice one to sort of think about. Does a doula actually make a difference? What are some of the women things? So I asked my clients about what kind of difference they thought I made. So one said, and I asked them to just give me in a sentence or two. So one did. She got one sentence. I felt more held in the hospital setting, having Hayley there, and a large amount of trust and safety. Another client said, imagine yourself completely free of worry, stress, and all anxiousness with the delivery of your baby. This is what it felt for me, having Hayley's presence and support in my birthing suite. It was reassuring knowing I had Hayley to mediate between myself, my husband, and our midwife, someone who could advocate my wishes and desires, someone who could be the voice needed to be heard, to drown out the outside noise, to offer encouragement, and to remind me that I was indeed fearless and capable of delivering my son into this world. And then a third said, Hayley provided support for my husband and I to really drop into the birthing space. Having her presence there with us as someone who understood our capacity to birth without intervention and natural physiological birth created another layer of trusting in our experience. Hayley supported us to stay calm, offering peaceful understanding of the process of birth. Having another person with us to provide physical support, comfort, and offering advice contributed to a beautiful and authentic birth experience. If we hadn't had Hayley's support, there would have been a lot more stress in our birthing space. As I went through the natural oscillations of birth and voicing my struggles, without Hayley's voice of calm and experience, my husband would have fell into a state of doubt. Inevitably, this would have affected his ability to offer me support and presence, and therefore could have interfered in my birth process. And another client said, after feeling overwhelmed, lost, and vulnerable in my first birth, we decided to enlist the help of a doula. I can say with full confidence that this birth, this time, was the best experience of my life. Hayley made me feel safe and heard. I remember saying to my husband as labour was approaching, I think Hayley believes in me and my ability more than I do. I didn't realize that that was what I truly needed. Someone who believed without any doubt that my body was built to birth, someone to hold that space, someone that knows all your birth hopes and works seamlessly behind the scenes of birth to ensure your voice is heard, even when you can't speak for yourself. I feel like I didn't realize how much having her there helped until afterwards. And even now there are things I remember and I think, well, thank goodness for Hayley. And then I asked her what she felt might have been different if she hadn't had me as a doula present. And she said, yes, I think my husband wouldn't have been as involved because she gave him the confidence through the education and also just being there and encouraging him to participate. I think I would have cried a lot too from the recollection of my previous birth. It would have been easy to just follow what I knew, which was an epidural and a transfer from the birth center to hospital. Also, I felt like I wasn't feeling rushed during my labor. I think if she wasn't there and I was watching my birth center midwife running around doing paperwork, taking phone calls, I would have felt as though I'd just make it easier for everyone to just hurry up and seek alternatives like pain relief. That calm consistency made time irrelevant so I could focus. And interestingly, I like those 4 births. One was home, one was birth center, one was a hospital going through general care as a VBAC, and one was an MGP midwife. So yeah, just interesting the different but similar themes and different experiences through there. And that kind of wraps it up for me. So over to everyone for any questions. If I click.
Thanks, Hayley. I think that was a really good reflection in terms of, as midwives, like we're really aware of being with women, but a lot of the times, like the partner or the husband or the support people she's brought with her, like they get a little bit of love, like, oh, like, go make yourself a cup of tea, how you doing? But they don't get like actual support for themselves, because as midwives working in the birth space, we just don't have the time for it. Not with all the documentation these days and the interruptions and the running around, and then the actual care that you're giving to the woman and the baby. So yeah, it's really good to know that there's like extra support out there that families can access in terms of like partner support.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
Cool.
So I've got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So Dee's asked about fees. And I think we covered this in the last doula session that we did, where we were aiming all the information at consumers.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a massive variation. Just like some people will go to see a GP, and you know, some might bulk bill and some might charge like, you know, an extra $80 on top of the bulk bill. And understandably, as doulas all over Australia will offer different packages and different combinations of care, and the fee structure is significantly different as well. But I think last time, and you have to take over it for a little bit because I can't remember, last time we talked about kind of the minimum and the maximum you'd heard.
And I think it's really interesting. I think when some women have like, they've done a Google search and it says between $1,000 and $2,000 or something like that. And that's really, I'm like, you know, like they obviously haven't actually gone and done any real research, whoever posted that, because there's some that are up to 7,000 I know of, you know, sort of a few packages that are kind of like the premium platinum, and they're $5,000 to $7,000, you know, but I guess and you know, to give a ballpark, like my package with all the education and all of the things that I include, it's usually two plus 2 appointments, you know, 2 before, 2 after, plus of course the education and the hands-on. You know, usually I actually have face-to-face contact with couples, you know, 6 to 8 times throughout in their journey, and that's $2,549, and I do offer a discount to those who engage a private midwife, just as a recognition that, you know, they're already investing. So there's a $400 discount for people doing that. So
and like, I guess if you compare that to, you know, like the hours that you're working, you know, you're probably doing a good 30 to 40 hours
Yeah, and all, like, for
over
me,
that time.
they're in someone's home, so that's, you know, that's travel, and all of those things. So yeah, and I think that's part of that entrepreneurial sort of, you know, aspect of this work is we have to value ourselves as doulas so that we can be like, yep, if I'm going to keep doing this, like, that means I'm not doing another job where I'm making money. And so I need to charge what I'm worth. Like, you know, it'd be lovely to do just, you know, do it all for free, and like someone feeds you and someone pays your mortgage and all that. But that's not, you know, and obviously the other side of it, like there's in that sort of matrescence and matriarchal sort of you know, energy, as well as that we need to value that service and that support. So there's, you know, energetically exchanging money for that service is healthy for the woman as well, to say, hey, I'm worth being looked after and I'm worth this care, and I'm you know, and my partner is, you know, sees the value, and we're investing in this together so that we can be, you know, we're going to be, you know, better for it, sort of thing. So yeah.
And then you're also on call for a couple of weeks as well.
Absolutely.
And that, you know, that can affect what you do, where you go.
Yep.
And then just the being on call, you know, if you're working in a hospital, you get on-call rates, and, you know,
there's not. Yeah, and
so I feel like that's pretty.
It's a gamble, but it puts strain. Like, I mean, many doulas, not all of us, but many doulas are called to the work after having children. So, you know, or growing families in the midst of it all. So it puts a lot of pressure, that on call, you know, and you know, the other side of it is that we don't have those regulations. So we don't like, oh, we'll only ever be gone for 12 hours. That's not going to be the case. Like,
oh yeah, that's a good point.
There's, you know, that it's as long as a piece of string as to, you know, we have to manage our own fatigue and, you know, all of that kind of thing. So my personal experience has not been ever where I've, you know, to a point where I've had to really sort of like, you know, put everyone under extra stress with, you know, we've managed it so far, but there's, you know, many situations that I know of where people have had like 2 or 3 day labors that they've had to, you know, manage their fatigue through and call in backups and things like that. So yeah, so that gets, you know, that's just got to be absorbed by what the flat rate fee is, if that's how it's structured. So
yeah. Cool, thank you. And then Dee's other question is, do you get involved with Indigenous women or people who aren't able to afford the doula style of support? If they don't have family with them in labour.
Yeah, and that's something that very much is part of that, you know, like juggling act and you know, sort of again valuing our worth, but also wanting to serve everyone and make the service available to, you know, to more people in the community. So I personally made a promise to, you know, myself and the community that after every 10th client that I would do a pro bono support for someone in need. I'm not at that point since I made that promise yet. So I'm not sure yet how I'm going to find that person or how they're going to, where that's going to land. So I'll be drawing on my community and you know, the birth working community to sort of get some advice on how to do that when that does come, and how to select someone. But I did do, in the meantime, there was a woman in need who I did a heavily discounted offering for her, and we did crowdfunding. So we had, we set the goal, I think we set the goal of 1,000. I've got to get onto it and raise the rest of it, but she's had a baby in the meantime. But yeah, that was really exciting to see that support. And we raised, I think it was like close to $600 just with a few social media posts. So yeah, definitely that's a priority for me. And I think for other doulas to be able to, you know, like make our service as accessible as possible. At the same time, I can't, you know, like I have to charge what I'm worth, because otherwise I'm out of business altogether and hubby sends me off to a job.
Yeah, no, that's entirely understandable. I always think, like, if I didn't actually need, you know, money to survive, then all my appointments with the family room would just be free, and I just love doing what I'm doing and for the sake of it. But yeah, no, and that's great to know that you've found creative ways of finding your financial support while still being able to support people who need it. I really hope that one day soon, you know, there'll be a system where, just like you go to a GP for a mental health plan, or if you need a physio referral, you know, people might get pregnant and be like, oh, like I've got, you know, maybe these risk factors, or like I've just got a lack of support, and, you know, there could be someone who gets to write a referral for a doula for like a subsidised government fee. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yes, that would be nice.
One day, come on. The day that we get a female prime minister, maybe.
But I guess I think then we would also be then under a regulatory body.
Yeah, that's fair enough, I guess.
I think that's where that would be. So there would be a compromise with that. So you know,
pros and cons to each, I guess.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else that anyone wants to chat about while we're here?
Any more questions? Cool.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks, Dean Tegan, for joining us today. This session has been recorded, so I will be popping it up on my Insta and on my YouTube. And then I believe that, I'm presuming you guys are midwives or health professionals. I believe that if you like write a reflection piece or something, you can also claim an hour of CPD for attending this. So fingers crossed. That's how it works in WA anyway. I'm not sure about other states.
Yeah, it does.
Awesome.
So Holly, would you have to authenticate that for us?
I'm happy to, if that's a requirement in your state. But I don't believe it.
Data, but I work really, really remote, but I still have to justify what my education is. So, and that's why I sent that question about the Indigenous girls, because we have to send them away from community. They can't birth on country, which is really unfair.
Yeah.
Even when I was in the Torres Straits, so I was there for 2 years. Those women are taken away on their own to go to a birthing area. I know you're shaking your head, Teagle, but this is what happens to these girls. These are the girls that want to be with women, are strong women, and they get denied that opportunity. And I just wish there was some opportunity out there for Indigenous health workers to become doulas, because that's what they are really, really good at. And then you've got somebody with them who can be, so now when I'm in my off swing, so I work 8 weeks out on the remote area and I'm home for 4. In those 4 weeks, I'm available to those women going in because there's nobody else as a link for them.
Oh, that's so fantastic.
Because they haven't got anybody. Yeah. And so they often say, where's Sister D? Where's Sister D? I need her. Because they've made a connection, and it's all about that connection that you make with women, regardless of whether you're a doula or you are a midwife or you're a continuity of care student who's doing her training, or you're a MGP. It's that connection that you make with a woman from the first meeting right the way through. And I always say to my students, you don't have to deliver a baby to have made an impression with that woman in her family journey to become a mum. So it's all about that connection that you make. I wrote to you, Hayley, because I've had a really bad experience where a doula was not constructive. She was destructive.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, she got in the way of what could have been a very natural, normal delivery, and kept, where you say you spoke as an advocate, she got in the way. She did the voice.
I was going to say, it sounds like she took over that woman's power in a situation.
Right, so she didn't even phone up when she came in labour. This woman just appeared at the back door at 2 o'clock in the morning. This lady had been labouring at home for 2 days. That's incorrect to do that anyway. So where is that person's knowledge, skills and ability to say this is outside the normal parameters, we've got to go in? She just brought her in. Well, she's having a baby, so I brought her in. So the whole stance is, I know, your face is like this. Nobody even knew she was coming. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. The doorbell went. So I went down to receive and I went, oh, hello. What are you doing?
Yeah.
I got this lady. And she was told that she was fully dilated. So this doula had actually examined her internally as well. That's overstepping that boundary. knowing what your roles are and not stepping outside. And she totally got in the way of any interaction between the midwife and the thing. I was okay, because I just said, look, I know you're here. We've got to do these things to start off with, and then hand it over to the next day shift. The day shift had absolute hell, and that woman went through a 4.5-hour second stage because a doula stepped in. That lady, and I know your eyes are going to pop out, right? So she ended up there with a very difficult high forceps. The doula said she was not going to theatre. She wouldn't allow her to have an epidural. She wouldn't allow her to have a drip. Everything, when the things were not right and deviating, that doula got in the way. So even the obstetricians actually stood back and went, we can't, but we've got to as a duty of care. So it was very, very difficult. Second time around, unfortunately, the doula had passed, which is very, very unfortunate because of the circumstances. And this girl was very, very different. She knew she had to come in at a certain time. She accepted care along the way. Yes, she went for what ended up to be like a VBAC, because it should have been a section. It was all done in theatre in the end. But she, in the end, had a 4-hour second stage. And then that baby was seriously ill. Mum was seriously ill. After the second time round, she pushed it out now, no problem. But, you know, there are, any doula, I would say, needs to know what goes on in an establishment that you're going to be supporting of where that woman goes to. Because she told her she could have candles, etc., etc. Well, that's okay if you're at home in a water birth, but not in an area where there's piped gases, you know?
Yeah.
Those sort of things. So in the end, so the girls met me on the floor in a shower with, you know, all those little tea lights. That's the only light we were allowed to have out of those things that flicker, that you've got a battery for. Tiny little things. And they said, do what you want. I went, yeah, no, I'm glad I've got my bloody shorts on, because I said I wouldn't be able to get in here. And they said, what are you doing? I went, that's where she wants to be. That's where she's going to be. Leaving it to. I can't see a bloody thing. I said, doesn't matter what you can see. That's what the lady wants. That's how she's going to set it up.
Yeah.
We did it.
Yeah. It's but, really unfortunate sorry.
You do what you can. You go with what there is. You advise what's right and wrong, or not really able to accommodate. And then, yeah, so the educator had to come in and educate the midwife and the doula. It was a very tense morning, and everybody went, God, you left at the right time, and went, why, what happened? When I got back, and I was like, oh, shit. Here she was, isolation, baby in an isolette in the nursery. That's how bad it was. And that baby was in there for 3 days.
Can I ask, the woman who, with that first experience with the, you know, that came in after 2 hours of labour, did you debrief with her afterwards? How did you feel?
I actually looked after her afterwards, and she was very, very close to everybody. She would not make contact with the midwifery staff, and it was a real big struggle for anybody to be able to make. So she'd done for 2 days, she'd been at home, labouring on and off. And then I'd obviously met her for 2 hours when she'd come in to handing over. But
did she feel she had a positive experience?
She never, ever opened up to anybody, not even her doula.
Yeah.
So only when she came back in for her second baby was she able to say, because she couldn't have a doula the second time, because that lady was obviously no longer with us. I think she could see that actually midwives do that anyway. And that when you work with somebody and you meet somebody and you can build a rapport.
She was fearful of the hospital, and that
I don't know. I think that was the impression given by the doula.
Yeah.
The doula was really, really negative.
Yeah.
And we had experience that this doula would make them free birth at home, which is illegal, you know. So, I mean, I've been a midwife for a very long time. This hair is natural, right? 1983, I became a midwife. So I've seen hospital, home. And I mean, in the UK, 85% of our babies were all born at home anyway. We didn't have anything called a doula there. That wasn't even thought about. You had your family member, it was with women, or you had your community midwife and her second person who was on call with it. So you had that dual head.
Yeah.
And you were known in that, you were known in that little village as, oh yeah, Sister D's on, we're going to get Sister D, you know, and you couldn't go to anybody's house in your car because they knew that next person was pregnant. That was the way that you would, because you do. So I'd say, well, am I coming in uniform or out of uniform? Do I bring my blue bag or not? Should I park around the corner? Is this just a coffee? Well, can you come for coffee in your own clothes, and then could you bring the blue bag stuff in a big bag? Oh, yeah, right, okay, well done. And then, you know, everybody knew everybody. So like, oh, Dee's been visited in there. She took a big bag with her, doesn't it? So, you know, that's where a difference was there. But I think this lady had to have her second breath experience to see that actually we are there as advocates for her, and midwives do speak up to obstetricians and anybody there. That's our role. But
yeah, and I get my question was just because that for me is the only thing I need to know is, did she feel positive at the end, you know, or through the whole, you know, did she feel positive, supported, you know, throughout and afterwards? But if we, you know, if I ever had a client where you weren't really certain, that would be like fail, like regardless of whether it was 4 hours or 4 minutes pushing a baby out, whether it was surgically, you know, instrumentally delivered, you know, whatever. It's, you know, because I've had women, you know, all the things, you know, like, as you know, like physiological fast home birth to, you know, like born before arrival through to, you know, induction through to, you know, all the things. But the common thread is they feel positively about their journey because they felt they were in control.
I think for this lady, because she was so ill.
Yeah.
I think because this lady was so ill, through what had occurred, I mean, we couldn't even rehydrate her, which is a normal resuscitation type procedure. So when somebody comes in dehydrated, then obviously, and you've got a crap trace, you do need to rehydrate this woman to actually give her some source to give that baby some food and oxygen and energy. So this lady was seriously ill for 2 to 3 days after her delivery.
Yeah.
She had choreo because of what had occurred.
Yeah.
The REM berries had ruptured 2 days prior to the coming in. So you can already build up that we're on the back burner. This baby suffered for it as well.
Yeah. So do you think that she was, I guess, she might have experienced coercion from
this doula did coerce. She spoke for her, not with her.
Yeah.
She spoke against us.
I hope she's a rogue. It sounds like that was, but yeah, that's certainly, and I think that's the beautiful thing about the birth working community in the unregulated aspect is that I think we're very open and honest about being clear, you know, like doing that inner work about knowing where our boundaries actually are, and you know, and defining our scope. And you know, you can't sort of keep doing that work unless you do, because you know, like I would imagine that woman, if she hasn't come out saying it was positive, she's probably not going raving, you know, like, oh yeah, it's the best thing since sliced bread having a doula. You know, like my clients, you know, they're why I keep going, because I'm like, okay, you know, like I check back in, oh yeah, you really did feel like I felt you were amazing. Did you feel amazing? Okay, you did feel amazing. Good. Like, you know, right, well, carry on.
But positivity goes 2 ways, doesn't it? So if a still positivity there, you get a positive feedback. Anybody who's made a connection and that positive, strong woman, you can do it, those affirmations, I believe will hold whatever the experience is, whether they end up in theatre for, you know, failed forceps into
the mode of birth almost beside the point.
It's their journey that's taken them to become a mum by whatever route.
Absolutely.
And I've always put that in wherever you go. And I think midwives do that same as well. And I think
absolutely.
To have somebody like you would be absolutely amazing here. And if you were in this area to link with an Indigenous medical services, you could fill that step of the mama. Because that's what's missing, that we can't, unless the aunties are living in this area. there isn't that connection.
It might be worthwhile talking to the Australian Doula College, because they had a little program. I can't remember the name of it, but they had like a community doula program, but in I think in some capital cities. But I wonder if there's a way, if you've got some people that are good at getting funding and all of that kind of thing, they're really clever at connecting the dots and advocacy, and, because birthing on country, obviously there's been some money spent on that, and it is a priority, and it's clear, it's in all the, the big national and state policies, and, there's money there to be spent. So it could just be a matter of like a few people jumping up and down saying, we need this, let's join these dots. That might be.
So I'm in the goldfields at the moment, and I'm actually the midwife, because my colleague Lee left last week. I'm actually the remote area midwife in women's health for the Nagajara Islands. So I'm literally
lovely. I did my training in Kalgoorlie.
Yeah. Well, I thought I recognised you. So I've been coming backwards and forwards to Kalgoorlie since 2017, and from between 14 and 17 right through to recent. I've actually still been doing the coastal units as well, so, and now I'm out there permanently, so I do 8 weeks now and 4 weeks back. So and once they get to know you, they will link. So that's where my doula my second hat as a doula comes in when I'm on my off time. But there is a space for you, and most is positive, but I might want you to send me some links if you can with those things that you mentioned then, because then I can use that for my masters.
That sounds great.
Beautiful.
Yeah. If we can get some advocacy happening out there.
I've just been clipping out because I've literally only just got back in yesterday afternoon, and you know what it's like, bag of washing. My husband's been away as well. It's like, his washing, my washing, and while the sun's out, I'm getting it out there.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That was great insight for working in remote areas and what they need. And hopefully Hayley can send you some links, and we can hopefully in a year or two hear some good news from your masters and applications and grants and all those things, and women out there can get the support that they deserve.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you so much for attending, guys. Have a wonderful day. And I'll see you around online somewhere, I'm sure.
Thank you.
See ya. Cool. Cool.